I will send you I'll send you a link. It will be just yours, Derek. I don't plan on reusing it for anything. You can use a link to our time together today any way you want.
Okay.
And so, folks want to attend, life happens. So there were, Derek and I had a practice defense together, which we did at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And I probably, in my mind, mixed the two up. And so it happens. I have a 14-year-old smart aleck grandson who occasionally will say, Papa, do you have dementia? And I don't say, I don't know, I forget. So the apology is mine on the mix-up, and it's so very, very good to see you all here now. Our process is to culminate the Doctor of Ministry defense stage, the defense a part of the, or rather the dissertation phase of the doctoral program. I have had the honor of serving Derek, Chaplain Vande Slunt. Chaplain, are you an admiral yet, Derek, or is it?
Not likely.
No?
Not
Oh,
ever, probably.
I'm for you if anybody needs my vote. And so,
We did just have the Navy Chief of Chaplains here at Regent last week.
Oh,
wow,
wow.
what
I
a
got to
deal.
interview him, and Gordon Robertson interviewed him on the 700 Club last week.
Oh, cool.
We had a wonderful visit with him.
So we had my endorser, who was chaplain of the Marine Corps. He was going to try to tune in, but I think the message I got from him, he just wished me blessings. I think maybe his plans changed and he wasn't able to meet at this time or something.
Yeah,
So,
or I ended up changing his plans. No, no matter how that worked, but you will have a recording of everything we do, Derek.
okay.
And so
That includes a audio version and a
it's
text version.
it's the
Yeah,
but I
free
will
version.
I'll release the video link, of course, which has everything to Derek, and then he can use it however he wants. If you want Derek, if Mark wants me to, I probably should say Dr. Jumper in this context.
Mhm.
You get old enough that you realize my mother did not name me doctor, so I don't know for sure what to say. But Derek, if Dr. Jumper wants a copy, will you give me permission to send him the link also?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I have been serving as the chair. The chair's responsibility is for the dissertation. So it's the composition process when it comes to the 5 chapters of the dissertation. And then Dr. Jumper has been so graciously willing to jump in as a second reader. Here you have somebody else, Derek.
Yep, we haven't done introductions yet. I'll get to
I just noticed. So Dr. Jumper is the second reader on the committee, which means he's here with us today and will participate ultimately in our conclusions from all that Derek is doing. Dr. Jumper is the chair of the chaplaincy program, both master's and doctoral levels. And he's written, can I do an advertisement? He's written a wonderful book on J. Rodman Williams, the Presbyterian. What's the title again, Mark?
Presbyterian Prophet.
It is outstanding. So I have to tell you, Mark, when I was a Jesus freak teenager in Southern California, I met him at Melodyland. Can you believe that?
Yes.
So he is hugely important to the School of Divinity, and what a great book. So if you all are lacking something to read,
Can you hear it?
Yeah, we have.
You might need to mute that person.
I'm going to do so. Okay, folks, you are wonderful, wonderful. So Dr. Jumper is the guy, and he must have a special love for Derek Vande Slunt because he agreed to come in as the as the director of the chaplaincy program to serve as the second reader today. So he and I will be the committee. So when we refer to the committee, it's just the two of us. After Derek is done presenting his defense, we will go into a breakout room and just disappear magically. And we'll say, what do you think, et cetera, et cetera. I have to tell you, Derek, that conversation will also be on the recording. So we're going to be polite.
Okay.
It's going to be very, very good. In the meantime, Derek is going to interview his guests. Several of these are my guests. They just completed 897. That means they now having begun to engage in the dissertation phase of their program. And once we've all been introduced, then Derek will give us his PowerPoint presentation as his defense, Dr. Jumper and I can ask questions during the defense. Then we will give guests the opportunity, and if I may, I would prefer that those who are my guests, who are recent 897 graduates, would not ask questions. Not that you don't have good questions, but we're not wanting to. We want everything to be about Derek in this particular context. And so any of you who are his guests, I will give you an opportunity at the end to ask questions. And then Dr. Jumper and I will go into the breakout room, have our conversation, come out and give Derek our conclusion. So let's begin by Chaplain Derek introducing your guests, please.
Okay, so I'm going to go from just who I see, the top left corner. I see Evelyn DeZeo from the church in Iowa that I came into the Navy from. And Steve Petrulia right under her. Steve was with me when I did my internship in seminary in Hamilton, Michigan, and we've stayed in touch over the years. Of course, Dr. Jumper in the middle of my screen, and then I've got, you mentioned Admiral, retired Admiral Dr. Alan Blues Baker is my endorser. And that means he's the representative from the Reformed Church in America that supervises my work as a chaplain. Those are the ones I see pictures, or some of these I don't see pictures and I don't recognize the names. So if somebody does pop on, I'll make an introduction, but those are the ones I recognize.
So folks, the ones that we see only some kind of a designation, if you would like to say who you are. So if you're a guest of Derek, he can introduce you. I see a CHAPL_000 on the screen. Do you have a mic on so you can tell us who you are? I see you have a microphone. Your mic's not turned on.
Oh, okay. So that's Chaplain Bush from 2nd Marine Division. So he just messaged me. So that is the assistant division chaplain.
Excellent.
That,
Thank you.
that I
Welcome,
serve.
Chaplain. It's great to have you.
So I'm glad he made it, because I was trying to communicate the time difference to him and I couldn't reach him. So
I know. Thank you so much for your patience. And just recently, I see an iPhone 5T MSG. Let me see. Do you have your microphone on? Whoever it was, just disappeared. Have you all ever been in a Zoom meeting and some crazy person found a way to hack it and do nasty things in the? That's really.
I have not had that happen.
I have. It's disconcerting.
So I'm guessing many of the others are your students, Dr. Jumper?
They're my students. They're my students. So Sinette is now an 899 student. Deborah Harris, Deidre, Lucy, Camilla, I would say, Rosalind, all are recent 897 students. Which means, folks, 897 is a proposal phase, which is very intensive. And when they pass through that, they become dissertation students given a chair, et cetera, et cetera. It's a time bending kind of experience. Chaplain Derek had some additional challenges at the beginning, an IRB challenge from the Marine Corps, which caused Dr. Flynn to significantly restructure how we do IRB, Derek. So he's
Oh,
he's
okay.
he's anticipating that possibly happening again. I mean, who knows? And if it does, he will be ready. So that was a learning experience for
For the guests, IRB is Institutional Review
review
Board.
board. Yeah.
And there's both a review board at the university level and in the military. I had to do a review board at the military side to be able to do military research.
And we have an IRB, but we kind of shortcut the process by having a school representative handle the application process. A lot of it is semantical, but there were some adjustments made, so it was helpful to us going forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open in prayer and then invite Derek to share the screen and just run through his excellent work that he has done. Again, Dr. Jumper and I can jump in and ask questions if we want to. And then when Derek is done, I'll say, Derek's guests, do you have any questions for him, etc.? And if not, we will disappear and then we'll be back. So let me open us in prayer. Father, I thank you for this opportunity to celebrate together the very, very good, intensive work that Chaplain Vande Slunt has done. I thank you for all the work he's already been able to accomplish as a Marine Corps chaplain. I thank you for the difference he has already made in so many lives and the great value that his research will add to his ministry, his function, and his work. So I pray that your blessing would rest upon him, rest upon his wife as she makes her way over, all of our guests, rest upon Dr. Jumper. We thank you, Lord, for this great and precious opportunity. We pray that you would be with us and cover us with your presence in Jesus' name. Amen.
Could I make a little recognition, if I may?
Yes, sir.
For Blues Baker here, he has written and colleagues and friends over the years. He has written an amazing chaplaincy textbook. What's the name of it in full? I want to get it right.
Oh, hey, Mark, Foundations of Chaplaincy.
Foundations of Chaplaincy. We've been using that book in our chaplaincy courses for ever since it came out, really. And now I just wrote a book, Chaplaincy, co-wrote a book, Chaplaincy, A Comprehensive Introduction. But we're going to continue using Blues Book. It'll be good to have both. And so I just want to point that out as his expertise in this area. It's really a fine work.
What a blessing. What a blessing.
Thanks, Mark. I'll send a contribution over to. Thanks, everybody.
Share the royalties. You know,
Yeah,
we don't write to become rich. I have to tell you that.
Yeah.
All right, Derek, it's all yours.
Okay, so I'll share my screen and then I'm just going to start talking through my research. So you'll see the same thing, the PowerPoint presentation that I wrote. All right, so the screen. All right, and share. And I need to switch to PowerPoint. Oh, I forgot. During the break, it restarted my computer. So
don't you love that?
Yeah, well, it got the update done, so it didn't have to do it during the event right now. So, all right. So now we will go to display mode and present. All right. So healing shame is the topic that I've been working on. I've been working on this for several years with Regent and within the Marine Corps. with other chaplains, and I'll introduce some of that. So I've been a chaplain now for 8 years, and have served at Cherry Point as a base chaplain. My last command was at the USS Wasp in Virginia, where I did my doctoral work with Regent University. And I did quite a bit of it online while I was deployed and during COVID. And now I'm currently at Camp Lejeune. My first half of the tour was at 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, which is an infantry unit. And then I moved to amphibious assault amphibian, it's called. Trax is what we call it now. You'll see some pictures later, but I'm just trying to give a little bit of context of my background. So as I did the research, I realized that there are a lot of foundations and things that are believed but not accurate about shame. So I start with shame myths and truths, and I started this with my class that I did with the Marines as well. So I had 30 Marines in the research group that participated from 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. They're currently deployed with the 2-4 MU, but they participated in the research portion, which I'll get to as we work our way along. So shame myths and truths, and then what is a definition of shame based on the research, and then how do we heal from shame? That was the real focus, and building shame resilience. I'll share my research results, analysis, questions, and then wrap up. So the first myth is if I ignore shame, maybe it will get better or go away. And the truth that the research shows is that we need to confront shame and recognize that it's there. If we let it hide, it has power over us that even if we don't recognize it, it continues to exercise a silent power in our lives, and usually it's a destructive power. The second myth is that I can work harder. I can work my way out of shame. The truth is that working harder often leads to frustration. We think I can get it better, I can get it perfect, and it sometimes leads to perfectionism, which when we do realize I'm not perfect and I messed up on this part, we end up getting down on ourselves even more because I worked harder and I'm still not over my shame. The third myth that no one else needs to know, I can hide my shame, is it keeps us from engaging others who can actually ground us or help us understand the reality that we're human, that all of us mess up once in a while, and that we can be forgiven or we can overcome our shame. We need others. And when we allow isolation to own our shame or to fuel our shame, we never heal from it. And so relationships are one of the significant ways that we overcome or that we work our way through shame, by having others speak truth and speak value into our lives. Myth number 4 is if others know, they'll judge me or humiliate me and shame me even more. But talking about shame is a way to take the fear down a notch, at least. And yet we have to choose somebody who's safe, usually a counselor or a friend or someone that we can trust with our deficiency, that they're not going to use it against us, and that it will be, they could help us even heal from it. So getting over fear is the real challenge in dealing with shame, that I'm afraid I'm going to be judged. I'm afraid someone's going to look down on me. One of the other myths that people believe is that religion makes us feel more shame, that we feel judged in faith groups. And often that is a truth, even in churches. People who have gone through difficulty say, well, no, I don't want to go to church because I'm just going to get judged there. They're going to look down on me. The truth is that when we use our faith properly, it helps us overcome shame. And I speak specifically from my faith perspective, which is Christian, but within the Marine Corps, the research that I found from Duke, Harvard, Yale, all says that from a number of faith backgrounds, if we have our orienting and foundational beliefs, truths, convictions, and a group of people that walk alongside of us, we are more resilient and more likely to overcome the negative, that it won't have the power over us. So myth 6, when I compare myself to others, they're always better. The myth of self-comparison, that we need to present, we all try to present the best version of ourselves to others. We all try to look good. The challenge for us is to say, I don't need to compare myself to someone else to feel better. I don't need to put someone else down to make myself feel okay. I can recognize that you're good and I'm also good, and we're doing good things. And that helps us dethrone shame. Myth number 7, and I'll spend a minute because I know this slide is kind of busy, but Brene Brown was one of the leading researchers that I read and actually started reading on shame when I was, even before I started my research. This was one of the books I found, and my wife had introduced me to one of the books that I'll mention later. But she makes a difference between armored leadership and daring leadership. The myth is that we need armor to protect ourselves, that we need to guard ourselves, and that by allowing our emotions to be expressed, they make us weak. The truth is that numbing our emotions leads to not only a loss of the negative, but also a loss of the positive, that we end up numbing all emotion, not just the negative emotion. So Brene Brown, and I had to really work on this with the Marines, because initially, when they heard armored leadership, they're like, yes, I want armor. I want protection when I go into battle. But the type of armor that Dr. Brown is talking about is the kind of hiding in a bunker and trying to do all of your fighting from a bunker and never leaving the bunker. You're not going to win a battle if you never leave the comfortable place or the place that you've secured yourself into. And that her challenge is that by being daring, by exhibiting courage, that we're willing to learn, we're learning as we do things, and we're willing to try things even though we can't do them perfect yet. We're willing to get better. We're willing to learn from others and allow vulnerability to help us in that process. That wearing armor is heavy. It's hard. It has a lot of weight to it. It leads to us not trusting others. It leads to us then making decisions in a silo where we only consult our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and often leads us to be in conflict with others. So she says that we should be a learner instead of a knower, that we can name the issues, that we can learn skills, that we can ask questions, and that we can acknowledge that I don't have to know it all in order to be successful. I just have to know or be willing to embrace learning from someone else. That learning is not all within my ownership. That community often will help me learn more. Myth number 8, I need to hustle and fight to prove my worth and my value. That if I work harder, others will recognize that and they'll give me credit. The problem is often this leads to stepping on others, and it challenges us to act in ways that go against our values, where we say that we care about somebody else, but I have to step on them to make myself look better. Gratitude is often what opens our world and makes our relationships better and more valuable to others. That I want to get it right together rather than just be right on my own. And so then the definition of shame. Now, the research I started with, and often shame is referred to as a feeling. Feeling is where shame often starts, but what I found in the research is that it doesn't end there. Shame is a mentally negative belief. It's an attack on our identity. It even involves self-harming thought, that when I don't feel valued, when I don't feel loved, when I don't feel like I can be a contributing part of this group, then I want to leave. And so it roots itself into our soul or into our mind, that especially I've noticed this with Marines who grew up without encouraging parents or grew up in a rough home life. They don't think a whole lot of themselves. They join the Marine Corps because they want that identity of being a fighter, being a warrior. But then they realize, well, I'm not that good at, I'm not as good as this person or that person, or my staff sergeant or my corporal or my lance corporal keeps belittling me, and I'm not actually that good of a Marine. So I lose value instead of gaining value when shame sets in. So the history of shame, it was believed to be a good benefit for community, that it helped people to avoid sticking out. It helped people to fit in and avoid negative behaviors, like, somebody going to the community swimming pool without a swimming suit. There was a shame involved in that, so you wouldn't do it. There was a reason why shame was used, and it was believed to have a positive benefit on society. The challenge is that, at least now I'm speaking more into the Marine Corps community, but this has corollaries for civilian community as well. And the pictures you'll see are from my Marines when we're doing what we call coffee on the ramp. So Marines are trained to embrace the identity of once a Marine, always a Marine. And initially that sounds great. But what I've found and what I've seen in other chaplains' conversations is that often they don't feel like they're a very good Marine when they mess up. And so then they lose that positive identity because they don't feel like they deserve to be here. They don't feel like they deserve the award, even if they get an award, because they don't believe that they actually did something that was good enough to earn the award. So the other trouble is we see junior leaders who have experienced shame as they came in, or maybe even before they came into the Marines, in their family or whatever. They pass on that name calling and the negative identity, trying to encourage somebody not to be a loser or not to suck. They often say, you suck or you're worthless. And that, somebody with a solid self-esteem would say, well, no, I don't suck, and I'm going to prove it to you that I'm better. But somebody who already has a degraded sense of self-worth is going to say, well, yeah, I guess I do kind of suck. The decrease in religious influence has also led to a negative, a loss of positive identity. Often our religious understanding is where we gained our sense of what is my value. And with less and less, it's like almost half of our Marines say they're not affiliated or they're not practicing a faith, even if they grew up in one. They also lose the positive benefit of that community identity with faith. So values, beliefs, morals, and convictions, they're ammunition that can help give us the ability to challenge shame. But if we don't have that ammunition, we lose the battle. And that's what I'd like to help chaplains and other leaders learn how to give ammunition to their Marines or to their people by saying things like, I believe in you. You can do this. Don't quit. Don't give up. You are here. You make the team stronger by being here. I value you. I appreciate you. Things like, this is going to be a challenge. This is going to be hard, but I believe we can get through it. Being honest with them about challenges that are coming, but also that we can learn, we can grow, we can get better through this. So one of the other challenges, and Brené Brown points this out in several different podcasts and things that I've listened to, that perfectionism is often, if we see it on the surface, we know that shame is hiding in the back seat or riding underneath the surface. That fear is driving that shame. And it's one of the areas where we tend not to think that if somebody's performing well, they must be doing okay. Often they're driven by a perfectionistic tendency, and they're actually struggling with shame, and they just don't know how to deal with it. So what we find, one of the main teachings of Dr. Brown is that there's a difference between guilt and shame. And some of the other authors accentuate this as well, that shame is focused on the person, whereas guilt is focused on the act. I did something wrong, but I can repent. I can get over it. I can ask for forgiveness. It's felt in a less long-term effect on us. And usually there's a way that you can heal or overcome it. But shame is where it says, well, you messed up because you hurt this person. You're a bad person. It's a lot harder to resolve. It's often felt more long-term instead of short-term. And it often has critical self-judgment as part of its core. And so recognizing the difference between guilt and shame helps us confront it and help our Marines, help our people that we're engaging with to heal from it. So one of the other things I learned, and this came through research from Dr. Harold Koenig. He did a training with us a couple of years ago with the chaplain corps in the Navy, and he said that moral injury, he also deals with post-traumatic stress disorder, but moral injury, for those of you not aware, is here's who I think I should be, but I'm not. And I encountered this significantly with my Marines coming back from Afghanistan when I was with 1-8. They said, we went there to solve and to heal, to make the situation better. We came back feeling like it was a bigger mess than, and that we didn't do what we intended to do. And so moral injury is that feeling of here's who I thought I was, my identity, and here's what I was actually allowed to do based on the limits we had. And so I feel angry at the enemy, or I feel a sense of shame that I couldn't do more, or I feel a sense of I can't look at my wife in the eye or whatever after of the things that I did or I observed, or a sense of loss in that I should have done more, a sense of in PTSD, we see insomnia or nightmares often with the depression. We have an ongoing sense of anxiety and sometimes self-medicating. We see our Marines turning to alcohol or other drugs. And when we see the civilian wise as well, people go to the doctor and say they have anxiety, but they don't say where the anxiety came from. It might have come from moral injury, that they're struggling internally and they can't put their finger on it. And recognizing that allows us to treat it appropriately rather than just putting a Band-Aid on. So one of the other things we teach too in the chaplain corps and in the Navy and the Marine Corps is recognizing suicide and being aware how to help our Marines recognize and interrupt the negative thought patterns. So Safe Talk says that we should be alert. And I've done this class every couple of months with 20 to 30 Marines. In the last several years, I've offered this class to probably 200 Marines. And it helps us be alert to, okay, can I get somebody to help before they take a destructive action? If I notice that they have a suicidal ideation or mindset that says, well, I'm just a burden. I don't want to be a burden, or I don't belong, or I don't fit in, are a couple of the leading indicators of somebody having a negative sense of loss of purpose, loss of value, a loss of understanding of their positive value, and it can lead to depression, despair, self-doubt. Assist is a further level of training that says I can intervene and gives me tools, gives some of our trained Marines more tools. It's a much longer, more in-depth training that says, here's a pathway to safety. Here's a pathway to value and to healing. So shame and post-traumatic stress. Now, this is something I studied, but it wasn't something I was able to incorporate very much into my research, but there's a strong association between moral injury and post-traumatic stress. The idea that I want to avoid other people because I don't feel valuable myself. I'm not good enough. Nobody loves me. These thought bubbles all end up filling in with I don't deserve, I don't need to be here, and can lead to suicidal tendencies. If I believe that no one else understands what I experienced in the battle zone, well, then I don't have a way to heal. And we need to give our Marines and give our service members avenues to heal. We can help them know that, hey, even if you don't believe in yourself, I believe in you. Even if you don't feel worthy, I believe you are worthy, and here's why. Even though you don't think you made an impact, I talked with many of my Marines about, they thought we were only going to save 10,000 people in Afghanistan, and we saved 100,000. That is success. Even though you don't feel like you had success there, you did a tremendous amount of good for those people that we were able to evacuate. So the message that we can heal from shame. John Bradshaw was one of the leading authors that I read. That was more historic. Lewis Smedes was another one of the historic authors and when I say historic, I'm talking 30, 40 years ago. The more recent authors were in the last 10 years. So Brene Brown is relatively in the last decade, and many have spun off from her work and the work that I read, and I found value in helping understand from a spiritual perspective. By Kurt Thompson is one of the other leaders on the soul of shame he talks about. So, trying to heal using the tools that we found that actually we already have some of them in our communities and in our healing agencies, like, Alcoholics Anonymous or others like that. You need community. You need people that aren't going to judge you, and you need to confront, not be secretive. Brene Brown says, in order for shame to thrive, it needs the exact opposite of those things: isolation, judgment, and secrecy. And if you have those things, shame grows and shame thrives in those environments. So we have what Dr. Brown called a shame spiral that happens in our lives when we feel a sense of loss, when we don't deal with our emotions, when we feel shame and guilt, and then that shame and guilt leads us to more of a sense of loss, and we don't deal with the feelings. It leads to a shame spiral or even a shame storm is one of the other ways that she talked about it, that even our kids, some of our kids need to be taught how to break that spiral, break that cycle of shame, and that we can heal from that by breaking that destructive thought pattern. One of the things we can do is embrace the concept of forgiveness. And this is, again, within our Christian context, that Joseph and his brothers, I told, and this is also Judeo-Jewish in the Old Testament, I told the story of Joseph and how his brothers did wrong to him and how he was shamed, how he could have just led to his own destruction while he was in prison, but he ended up engaging with others and being a blessing to them with God's working in his heart. He comes out of prison and he says, you intended this for evil against me, but God used it to good. And Joseph saves a nation. He also reunites with his brothers and is able to reconcile. That doesn't help. That doesn't happen without God. In my perspective on that story, God had to work in Joseph's heart for that forgiveness to happen and for him to heal. Also looking at the model of Jesus, how Jesus confronted shame with honor. He confronted it by restoring people to community. He invited them back into their family, into the synagogue. The adulterous woman, he lifted her up. He was willing to touch her when that was deemed, you don't touch somebody who's unclean. He talked to the woman at the well, and even though she had been rejected 5 times and probably didn't have any kids of her own and just didn't feel valued, he gave her a value. He gave her a voice to be able to be a witness. For Thomas and all of the disciples, Jesus embraces their questions and their doubt. He teaches them, he encourages them, and then he honors them and blesses their ongoing ministry and says, now you're in charge of leading the church, and empowers them to do that. For the lepers who were banished from the community, he invites them to go back to the priest, go back to the synagogue, to show yourself as clean and be a part of the community again. For the lame, he says, you're forgiven, before he says, rise and walk. He deals with the spiritual need, the shame, and the sense of lack of worth before he heals the body. And so we see that pattern in how Jesus addresses shame. And honor is the leading corollary that helps us confront that. One of the professors at Regent University, Dr. Carvello, actually focused on honor in her doctorate, that I used some of her foundational work to understand and to move forward with some of my work. So these are 3 of the books that I read from Dr. Brown. The Gifts of Imperfection was the first one that my wife got, and then I read. And then I on the ship found Daring Greatly and Rising Strong, building on a sense that courageous action, talking, confronting shame, helps us to be stronger leaders. She initially had more of a female audience, and then she ended up having more of a business and leadership audience. She's done TED Talks and many other types of leadership in trying to help people be willing to embrace vulnerability, to heal, and to overcome shame. So 2 different ways that shame tends to function. If it's turned inward, it leads us to hate ourselves and to depression and to destructive thought. When shame is turned outward, it often leads us to mistreat others, or to mistreat our own bodies, or to do destructive things, to not care or to take risky actions or choices. And I just think that those tendencies, we don't recognize them, especially shame turned outward. Well, they're just an angry person. Well, why? What's the root of that anger? So that we can find ways to heal. So there's many different tools that I've discovered and dug into. The SOCOM Spiritual Fitness Study, it's actually CHAMP is one of the other acronyms that you can break it down by, was used in the SEALs in MARSOC, to analyze how do we help our service members be stronger? How do we help them confront the things that get them off track? And they realized that sacrifice and service for the greater good, doing something, volunteering, helping others, helps you establish a solid identity. Thinking about and embracing a concept of purpose, meaning, and value is one of the other leading corollaries that they said, if we can help our Marines understand their value, or our sailors or service members, they have less of a sense of I'm not worthy. And then the third thing is embracing the connection to the divine, or embracing that there's an ultimate good or a better thing that I can work toward, even if it's not a full-blown faith. Shame resilience theory from Dr. Brown, she actually presented some research about how to confront shame, that we need to speak about it through a healthy pattern of counseling or someone else safe, that we need to have a courageous belief and value to challenge shame. And that often has to be a belief that's bigger than us. It has to be, and that's where Alcoholics Anonymous comes in with, I believe that this problem is bigger than me, that this alcohol, I cannot solve it on my own. And then they're a community. Alcoholics Anonymous and many of the other support groups are formed out of community, that others can help me through this. Others have won this battle. And so I have hope that I can win it as well by allowing them to speak truth and value into my life. So here's the survey, the test that I actually did. You see it's in the yellow versus in the orange, two different but very similar tests. As I was working on it with the survey department from the Marine Corps, they said really to have an accurate analysis from one to the other, you have to pretty much ask the same question after you do the training as you did before. So looking at the questions, do you understand what shame is about? How do you engage when you feel shame? Do you recognize when people have shamed you? Do you feel like you isolate when you feel weak or when you feel shamed? How do you confront shame? Do you know how to heal from shame? Do you know how shame impacts moral injury? And I didn't ask about post-traumatic stress because that was one of the areas that was deemed to have too high level of a risk for me to engage it with my Marines, that was something that needed more one-on-one care. So that I address moral injury more in the survey. And then, do you talk to others when you feel shame? Do you have somebody you could talk to? Do you embrace the concept of forgiveness? And then, what types of community could you use, or do you use community support? Now, on all of these questions at the beginning, they were somewhere around average or a little less than average. And the next page shows the survey results. So questions across the bottom, 1 through 10. On every one of the questions after the 3-hour training, or it was about 3 hours total time with the Marines, there was a 20 to 30% increase that the training was successful in helping them understand shame and how to heal from shame. And across the board, every question showed an increase, but across the board, it was about 30% increase in the pre and post tests. So the orange to the blue. So I also then interviewed some chaplains, and this was at the encouragement of Dr. Asplund, and just trying to understand, have other chaplains seen this problem in similar ways? So in the top corner, Chaplain Cox is a retired now, Captain Cox. He was chaplain at 1-8, my battalion, when I was doing the research, and I talked with him about how to address shame. And his approach was, you build relationships. You build relationships with your guys. He spent time in Fallujah, and he had significant losses with his Marines that were there, but he stayed in contact with them throughout the years. And by keeping them connected to each other, they were able to find a level of healing. Lieutenant Swancoat is one of my friends since chaplain school. We've stayed in touch. He talked about the power of forgiveness, the community support in overcoming shame, and just having social connections and building relationships that are positive, having a positive effect at overcoming shame. So that went along with the research as well of what he had actually done and seen in his work. Lieutenant Shore, he talked with me. He just moved on to Okinawa. He talked to me about the impact of sexual sin and shame, because often what we do behind closed doors, we don't want to talk about, and that we need healing from those things as well. And he had some resources that he shared with me that he's found helpful in working with individuals or couples to help them overcome pornography or a negative sexual identity that they can heal from if they're willing to confront it and overcome it. Commander Alvin, he was my supervisor at the 6th Regiment when I was at 1-8. He is now on a ship on the West Coast and probably deploying. He had studied shame in psychology and things, and so he tracked with me as I was doing my research. He said that he sees the lack of belonging and not wanting to be a burden as two of the leading drivers toward a suicidal mindset. And also the research that he's read, led to supporting that. And that he said we need to work on training our leaders better to stop the shame culture and stop, just because you were shamed doesn't mean you need to shame those who are coming in underneath you, the new trainees. The picture on the bottom corner is just my Marines having a fun day celebrating our community. They actually pulled two of those trucks. They competed on who could pull them the fastest across like a couple hundred foot spans, and everybody on the side was cheering for them. I just thought it was a cool picture to throw in on my Marines. So what do I plan to do with my understanding of shame? I hope to be able to train and help other chaplains understand the effect of shame on resilience and spiritual fitness. Those are two of the key buzzwords within the chaplain corps that we need to help our Marines be more resilient, that we need to be more spiritually fit as a total corps. That we also need to share with civilian leaders. I'd like to share with civilian leaders for parachurch and church ministry that shame is something they can confront and they can help people to heal from when it's confronted in helpful ways. Dr. Brown shares a secular healing path of empathy, which I found it felt very dull. It didn't feel like it actually would work to me in a church setting. And I talked to Dr. Moon, who was one of our presenters at the professional development when we talked about how to counsel and help people overcome shame. He said, cheap forgiveness leads to a deeper level of shame. If we offer somebody forgiveness before we've actually dealt with the weight of what they're carrying, they don't feel like it actually worked for them. That true forgiveness, he said, is deep and costly or valuable, and it has to involve the individual engaging in the work of healing. And without that, he said, people often fall into a deeper level of shame if they don't find a healthy way to work forward and work out of the negative identity. And then counseling with an awareness of shame's grip on others, helping use that myself to help my Marines and service members to find ways to healing. The pictures on the right are pictures of me serving my Marines communion. The tracks are the vehicles that we're currently working with and working from. And we were in the field, and those pictures just show me, and the top one being in the chapel that I served at my first command. So recommendations, things that I didn't have a lot of ability to resolve within my study. One was the impact of healing shame on post-traumatic stress. That I think we need to do more with that, and yet I just didn't have the bandwidth to be able to carry that in the research and the project I was doing. Also, secondly, the shame connection to sexual sin and healing. That I know there are pastors and Bible study leaders that are leading groups on healing, but I think it requires a healthy small group setting to confront that. I couldn't confront that in a large group setting in training my Marines. The topic did come up, but I didn't do a lot with it. And I think we could do more with that, because I think people get stuck in a sense of sexual sin, and then they think they can't get out of it. They can't overcome it. Application on forgiveness and healing within other contexts, that forgiveness was one of the things that actually had one of the higher levels before I did the survey, but also still gained in growth and understanding at the end. And I just think forgiveness and healing are significant things that we can use to help teach and train people. And then also working with combat veterans on healing and moral injury. That, loss of faith in a leader or in a command based on, somebody freezes in combat and then we've got to pull them out, or I trusted this person and they gave me the wrong guidance and it hurt, it got me hurt, or it hurt my Marine. That dealing with that loss of moral good, and how do I rebuild a sense of I'm a good person and I'm doing good things. I think we need to do better at that, helping our Marines understand that they can overcome shame and moral injury. So gratitude is the last thing. I'm thankful. My Marines are at the armory on the bottom picture there. They'd been working on cleaning their weapons and whatever else, and I just asked if I could get a picture with them to to celebrate the good things that they're doing. And I'm grateful for them, as well as grateful for many of you that you've engaged with me on the pathway of understanding shame and how to heal from it. And taking forward some of these learnings and being willing to engage them in further ways to bring about healing. So at this point, I believe I need to break my, open my screen back up. How do I do that, Dr.
Just
Asplund?
stop sharing at the top. There's a stop sharing button.
Okay, here we go. All right, so any questions that you might have that I can shed some light on based on the research and the understanding that I've gained in healing shame?
Question, if I can raise one. Early in the dissertation, you brought up the topic of false shame and how that could be imposed on people, and that sometimes it's difficult to get out because you begin to believe them. Would you like to share more on that topic of false shame?
So false shame is often received from someone else that it's not accurate for the first thing, that it's often misguided, and yet if we hear it enough, we tend to believe it, even if it's something about ourselves. And so, maybe I had a parent who did a shameful thing, and so I was labeled in a certain way as this person's kid. They're worth nothing. They're this person's kid. I inherited that shame that wasn't really mine to own. And it's hard to dig out of that unless you move or you go on to another environment. But in your own self-identity, you might still have this, well, you're a garbage carrier's kid, or whatever it might be. Your parents divorced and that was a shameworthy thing, or you were abused because you weren't a good kid, or so we're carrying a sense of shame that's not real. And when we can confront it and realize this shame is a lie, and here's what the truth is, we can overcome that false shame with truth, with accurate identity. So that's part of what I addressed in some of the other writing that I didn't in this.
Now, I know that at one time, Marines, in fact, all the services were known in their boot camps for imposing shame on recruits and saying, you're worthless, you haven't done it right, and because of that, you're worthless. They basically take an action that may have real guilt, or it's just something they need to inculcate something else, like learning to operate as part of a group. But anyway, they expand what happened and just say you're worthless. And now, when I was serving at Parris Island, I didn't see that. I saw some serious care along with a lot of serious discipline too. But that's a boot camp stereotype for all the services, I think. And how much of that do you think happens these days, and not just in boot camp, but all throughout their service?
I know it happens. I actually had one of the Marines when I was doing one of my trainings where it wasn't the actual research I was doing. He said, well, you do know we live in a shame culture, right? And I was shocked that he was a sergeant, and I was shocked that he understood their culture. He understood it that way, that, we shame somebody who doesn't fit in because they need to meet a certain standard to not drag down their fellow Marine. They need to be at this standard to be able to say, yes, I can protect or defend you. He said there's a reason why we use shame that way. And so understanding that it's not all bad, but maybe, somebody got into the Marine Corps with a misconception of what they were able to do, and maybe they're not going to be this Marine, or maybe they were better off in a different MOS and they just didn't get that spot. And so helping them understand that even though you're not the 100% Marine, being a 75% Marine is still better than nothing in battle, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we can work at that in helping them understand how do we heal and develop a positive self-identity.
Thanks. And I was impressed. I caught that, what you said about that Marine recognizing the culture he was in, and you were impressed that he perceived that. And this leads to a larger question about honor shame societies, which a lot of the world is that way, like a collectivist honor shame culture. And in the West, we're stereotyped more as an individualistic rather than collectivist achievement guilt culture. And now I'd say the Marine Corps has a fair degree of honor shame in it.
Definitely.
But, you know, it's balanced with a lot of honor too.
Well, but when you look at the modern social media and what our youth in their schools, in their social media, you know, looking at COVID, if you didn't get the vaccine, you were shamed because you wanted people to die. And so shame was a leading driver in getting the vaccine, that you must not care about people if you're not getting vaccinated. Well, there were a lot of reasons why people didn't want to get vaccinated, and some of them were valid. And by just dismissing that and piling shame on a person who you didn't even ask, right, what their reasoning was why they wouldn't get the vaccine, you were just piling shame on them, right? That's not healthy. And yet we do that. You know, if you're driving a gas guzzler, well, then you need to be shamed. If you're driving a Prius, you know, well, then you're a good person. Well, that's virtue signaling. That's trying to say, I'm a good person, look at what I'm doing. But is that accurate? And is somebody really a better or less person because of the vehicle they choose to drive? Is that fair to use shame in that way? I don't think it always is. And so then giving people the ability to say, you know, you heard this, but is it accurate? Is it true? And then being able to make an informed decision instead of just believing the shame that they've received is valid. I think that's where we need to work at, helping especially Marines or people forming their identity of becoming adults. What does it mean to own my identity? And how do we help them with that?
That's good. Any questions from Derek's guests for Derek?
Derek, thanks for being so thorough on this. It's been really helpful.
One of the things Dr. Dr. Baker helped me with early on was understanding that with Brene Brown, her research was much, she was all about vulnerability. And he said, well, you know, when you're talking to Marines, they don't like vulnerabilities, and you're going to have to find a different language to use. And I think I got to that in understanding how to be courageous and how to be strong. And even the concept of, you know, establishing fighting positions and using the right kind of ammunition, I think gets to their understanding level versus shame being a touchy-feely thing. So that I appreciate that, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You know, we give medals for courage, but every courageous act requires vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
When I did the warrior transition program for the Marine Corps, and one analogy I used was a washdown. That, you know, after you go play in the mud with your vehicles and so forth and yourself, you need to wash it down, especially before you come back to the continental U.S. It has to be washed down. And I think that analogy also works for them, that just to wash down, to wash it off, wash it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciated the thoroughness of your background and studying a lot of the literature. Very well done, putting it through a Christian lens, but understanding that you can't project a total Christian understanding at all, but you're taking Christian concepts that apply to all and helping them see and use those. I thought that was really good. And you did some good judgment of the literature, and then taking it and applying it in a new way. And that's the crucial thing that we want for all of you who are students here, that we want to see that transition from taking the concepts and finding a way to apply those within a ministry context and in a transferable way, that it's not just you working with a small group, but it's a beta test where this principle could be used. Like I think Derek has given a transferable concept here that can be used by other chaplains and by pastors for that matter. So that's the type of thing we like to see, that you've moved it in that direction of applying and that's what a doctorate ministry is all about, is applying the knowledge that's out there, shifting it and shaping it so that it can be practically used, and then using it to tangibly benefit people. So that's a good thing to see.
Thank you, sir.
Derek knows that for me, I think your research is profoundly important. It's obviously profoundly important for your Marines, for other active duty military personnel, but it's profoundly important for pastors and for, as Mark mentioned, for local churches, local congregations, people coming out of, and you mentioned COVID, Derek, people coming, back to the church, coming out of a situation that was confusing at best with a lot of shame.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not positive shame. I agree that there is positive. I did my doctoral research a long time ago on the shame-based cultures in China, Japan, and Korea. Their goal was to try to teach people not to think of themselves as autonomous individuals, but to think of themselves as part of their kinship unit, to think corporately. And I'm sure that that's significantly true in the military as well. It's true in the Marine Corps. We don't want you to just be an individual problem. We want you to learn how to think about us.
Yeah.
We're in this together, and that's a positive. We all could use, okay, this is not all about you.
Yeah.
So I think we could all use that. But then there are other people who just come through a crisis like we've been through, just thinking, I'm just a loser. I don't have any ability to make a difference. Do I have a future at all? I'm not sure. And so I think your work will have profound implications for the military, but far beyond that as well. And I'm just delighted with what you have done, Derek.
Well,
Thank you.
taking moral injury to a civilian concept, I've talked to people who did get the vaccine because that's what you do if you're a good person and you're thinking about the community, and then they ended up with a health defect or a problem because of it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I did the right thing. Why would God punish me? Why would I be getting a negative benefit if I did the right thing?
Yes.
I still had somebody die, moral injury is a bigger concept that I didn't hear talked about civilian context. And it took me a bit of understanding, even as I got into the military and I was hearing the term, that a struggle with what I believe is good and I'm doing what's good, and yet I have a negative result, or I'm not able to be the positive benefit for the community that I intended to be.
Yeah, there's got to be something wrong with me. I must deserve this. Well, no. So teaching them that is, I think, profoundly important, Derek. And I thank you for your patience in all, you had all the hoops you had to jump through, but the good and excellent work that you have done. Well, if there are no more questions from the guests of Derek, and thank you. Should I call you Chaplain or Admiral Baker?
Blues is fine. Yeah.
Thank you,
He goes by
Blues.
Blues. I feel uncomfortable when I say it sometimes, but
I know
that's
what you're
his
saying.
nickname.
So thank you so much, Mark. Mark and I'm going to move Mark over. It always feels weird when I can do this. It's like I'm pushing a button and I just made the rapture happen for Mark, but we have this breakout room. So I'm going to put us in a breakout room. They're calling it a waiting room now, I notice. and we will have a conversation and come back shortly. So thank you, everybody. Let's go ahead, Mark, and do our due diligence.
Let's see, Mark left.
Mark left. And they keep changing how we do this, Derek.
So I'll offer a word of wisdom from for our doctoral students. If any of you are in the Marine Corps, in the Navy, or in a military service, I was cautioned to be aware of the red tape and that it was going to take me longer. And I thought, oh, I can understand the process. I can figure it out. I can punch through this. And it still took me 3.5 years, a year longer than I expected. So if you're going to do ministry in a military context, you need to get more approvals and more permissions, and have more hoops that you go through in order to make that happen. So just be prepared for that. And I wouldn't change what I did because I think it still had benefit with studying within my context as a chaplain. So I just share that with you for your understanding.
Oh,
Mark,
Dr. Asplin, I was waiting and my screen sort of went blank and it put me back here. I'm not sure
no, I think it was the devil.
where
No, I got you over, and then I could do the same thing for myself, and and it did not happen. I can't tell you why. They keep changing how we do things.
Yeah.
Should we have a public meeting, Mark?
We could just shift to a phone. We could go mute here and just and take our video off and just call. You could give me a call or vice versa. You could do it on the phone.
Yeah.
If this isn't working.
Let's do that, my friend.
Okay.
Your number?
757. Everyone can take this down. 439.
Yeah, let me open up my.
Okay.
I thank you, everybody. My goodness sakes. 757-429.
439.
Thank you, sir.
2746.
So mute yourself there, my
I
friend.
will stop my video and mute myself here.
Here we go. Don't panic, anybody. And I better do the same.
All right, they're out.
Oh, that's funny.
You might have seen my wife joined us. She got back from school, so introduce her after the fact here. So while we're waiting, if anybody has any other thoughts or comments, you're welcome to speak.
Well, Derek, this is Deirdre Hill, and I was invited by Dr. Asplin. I just wanted to tell you, you did a wonderful job, and I'm in 899 now, and you have really, really helped me out. And so kudos to you. I'm so excited. I know I don't know you, but we're brothers and sisters in Christ. So I'm so excited for you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I had many students I started with, and I watched a couple of them finish ahead of me because I just got bogged down in the red tape of the military things. But it is exciting to encourage others across the finish line.
I'm Rosalind Brown. I was also in 897 with Dr. Ashlon, and I agree with Deidre Hill. You did an excellent job, and I learned a lot. about suicide, but I do want to about shame. I do want to ask you a question. How would you somehow work with shame with someone that's incarcerated? Do you find any similarities, or did you do any research in that area?
So I didn't, but the research does touch on, and I think identity is the big piece of it. One of my friends, who's a chaplain in my denomination, is actually leading a ministry, and it might even be a pilot project, but it's free on the inside is their title, and their concept of whether I'm judged and I'm incarcerated because I'm a bad person, or I'm free in Christ, and that's the difference that they embrace in understanding your identity. Chuck Colson is another one that I've read and heard from in the past, and how he became a Christian in prison and started prison ministry with the context of just because this happened in your life doesn't have to shape your future. It will have an effect on what you're able to do or not able to do, but you're still a valuable person and have a way that you can do good things in Jesus' name. And some of that is in ministering to fellow inmates. There was a prison ministry I was a part of when I was in Iowa, that a friend of mine was the pastor or chaplain of that facility. And we would go and visit with them and offer worship. And it's a different environment to be in because of the limitations and the structure and the background checks and everything else. But I think you can use some of the principles in positive identity and overcoming shame and moving forward in Christ.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent, excellent presentation.
So one of the things my wife, I don't know if any of you are involved in education, but one of the things my wife and I had talked about, and she's even considering doing if she does doctoral work, how shame affects the education environment. She's a teacher. And how, if we can use non-shaming language, even as we're correcting kids and as we're, you are a good person, but you just didn't get your homework done. That doesn't mean you're a failure. You failed a test, but you can learn, you can try, you can overcome this, how that can have a positive impact. So these principles, we can find ways to apply them. Brene Brown actually did some research and some things that she did with kids on how we can write about our shame and write our understanding of what happened in a shame experience. And by writing about it, you get at some of the emotions and you can help overcome some of the negative beliefs. You can confront the negative belief when it's on paper in a different way. And then you can say, well, is that accurate? And could I think about this from a different way? Can I change my perspective? One of my battalion commanders likes to confront the Marines with, well, your perspective changes how you engage with the reality you're in. So just grist for the mill there.
Hey, Derek, really appreciated your presentation. Great job with that. Hi, Tina. Good to see you again. You touched a little bit on the shame of the Marines and perhaps some from their home environment. And I think another direction that this can be really applicable is for parents. I don't know how many of the Marines are parents, but some of these insights can be really helpful for them as they begin families and raise kids and raise them in a non-shaming environment. So lots of ways that this can be applied. I was thinking of some from the church context. And again, just appreciate all that you shared and all of your research, and congrats as you're nearing the finish line.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Yeah, and with kids, I would say we often engage in sports, and if you do good in sports, you get the medals, you get the awards, you're the star player. But what about our kids who don't do good in sports? How do we give them other areas they can excel? And instead of shaming and saying, well, you suck, you're a bad player, I don't want you on my team, how do we give them a different environment and help them find what is their tribe, what is their specialty? And for my kids, it was getting them involved in swim team or getting them involved in band, getting them involved in other things that use their skills in a different way, to help them understand, hey, I have value here. I'm good at this. and I can, network with my peers and we can support each other.
Derek, thank you so very much for your presentation. It resonated with me personally, but also to one of my younger sisters served in the Marines for 12 years, and just thinking about some of her own personal stories and feeling of shame that she experienced because she got an injury and just didn't want to seem weak and felt that she couldn't report that. And it took a toll on her over the years, requiring multiple surgeries and so on. So that I really understood it from both a civilian perspective and a military perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, and that's true. I have seen that in the Marine Corps where being physically fit is considered the ideal. And what happens if you get injured? And then once you get fat, if you can't lose the weight because you can't work out, you receive a negative identity of, you get fat shamed, honestly. And if you can't turn it around quick enough, you have to leave service because you don't meet the expectations. You can't carry the gear and the uniform, can't wear the uniform well. I've seen that. And so how do we help even our people overcoming or recovering from an injury, bounce back with a healthy identity? All right.
So we're back, my friend. We're back. Was that weird or what?
A little bit.
I
We
want to
had some
make
more conversation while you were out about
Well,
shame.
no,
and
we had
apply it in different
conversation.
contexts.
The one thing you won't see though, Derek, as a result of, where did they put the breakout room? I'm sure one of you.
Oh yeah, we won't get a recording of that now, huh?
No.
Okay.
But I want to make sure everybody knows that Tina is with us.
Yep.
And so you gave Tina credit for getting you going in this direction. So I hope that you're going to award her in some way. You're going to, give her a trophy.
Well-
Dr. Jumper and I are just as pleased as we can be with all the work you did, Derek, with all the extra work you had to do, all the extra hoops you had to jump through, and the fact that you had the cooperation, they held your feet to the fire, but the fact that you had the cooperation of all the right people in the Marine Corps, that they really did participate in the sense that they were squeezing you hard every step along the way. You met every expectation well. Your scholarship was excellent, was applied in very good ways. You met all my expectations very well. For me, as a dissertation chair, I not only want you to have a good project and a dissertation, but I know we're going to publish it publicly, and you will be an acknowledged scholar in your field. And I want everyone to agree that that is now true. And you did so well every step along the way. So Dr. Jumper was reminding me that there are several levels of passing a doctoral student. And it is rare, but it is our honor to pass you with distinction and to congratulate you, Dr. Derek Vande Slunt.
Wow.
You all can clap if you want. Well done, my friend.
Yeah, I just
Thank you.
want to say it is very rare to do a distinction. We can just pass. We can pass with recommendations, and we can not pass, which is very rare. But the pass with distinction, that is not easily won. And I just want to add with Dr. Asplin that to get the active work of the institution you're in involved in this study is pretty unusual for DMIN projects. Oftentimes the institution will give its approval or its consent, a lot of times grudging, but to actually have the institution involved like you did, that is an amazing thing. It strengthens your study greatly, and that is to be praised. And I also want to praise Tina. Now, being the spouse of a dissertation student, a candidate actually, is, well, it's not like childbirth, but there's a lot of pushing involved. So
And a lot of
all
just
of us
getting
who've
out of the
been there
way.
can testify to that.
I'm telling you.
So we want to praise you for supporting so much, pushing when needed, pulling when needed,
That's right.
and also standing back when needed, and just allowing the work, making space and providing him the space. It is an amazing, it's an amazing process. So we want to thank you publicly as well, Tina.
Thank you, Tina. So,
Well, you may want to say something, Tina.
I was gonna say that, like, I think he went through this incredibly faster than a lot of other people that I know that have gone through their dissertation, and it takes them like 7 years.
Yep.
So so for me, it's like he saw these as stumbling blocks, but I'm like, but you've only been doing this for a couple of years.
Yeah.
no, but Derek was fantastic, Tina, in saying, setting goals for himself. Okay, I need to get this thing done. I said,
What's the next hurdle? Yep. What's the
I'm
next
all
hurdle?
for you getting it done, man. I guarantee. I'll do my best to keep up with you. So, Derek, well done. You just did us all, as we say in the South, you did us proud. And I'm very, very grateful and thankful. Dr. Flynn and I will take it the next step, because what we're aimed at now is publication. And I will keep you in the loop as to where we are in that process. But I don't think it will take long. You should have a published dissertation by the end of the summer semester, and
Awesome.
and get your Dr. Vande Slunt piece of
Yes.
paper to hang on the wall.
Yep.
I used to hang mine on the wall, and then I realized I'm the only person that's ever going to see it. Why is it hanging on? Why is it hanging on the wall? But at least Tina will be able to see it. So we're proud. We're very proud of what you've done. We're proud to have you as a doctor. You know, we usually say a doctor of the church, because that's what it is. But you've done some great work, and congratulations to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Jumper, as well. Appreciate your support and your help along the way.
Sure.
So I want to say I want us to say a parting prayer, a blessing upon you. There's no question, Derek, when you earn a doctorate, it opens doors that you never anticipated would open.
So true.
Doors of influence that you can't maybe even imagine now.
Mhm.
When I did my doctor of ministry, I did it for myself. I just thought I just want to do this. Every door that's opened ever since has been due to it. And so, Tina, get ready. But it's going to all make a great difference. So, Dr. Jumper, would you do us the favor of closing us in prayer?
Sure. Father, I praise you for this occasion, for having the opportunity to recognize and meditate on excellence. Just as we're told in Philippians 4, if there's anything good, if there's any excellence, think on these things. And that's what we've had the privilege to do today. And we praise you for having this excellence shown to us, because you are the most excellent exemplar of all. And this excellence has been brought into the lives of those Marines in the group, and will be brought into many more lives, Lord willing. We pray that you will indeed, Lord, be willing to bring this into many more lives as a tangible help. Please bless Derek and Tina with the richness of relief and satisfaction and the joy of celebration. Let them enjoy this moment. Let them take a well-earned rest from it and ready to move on in all that you have for them. Please bless his ministry, their family, their lives, and the students that are here today. I pray that you encourage them through this process. Let them be anointed to do great things as Derek has done. And we give you praise for all the help that you will be for us in the past, now, and always forever. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Amen. Thank you, Dr. Jumper. Thank
And
you,
thank you
Derek.
all
Thank
for
you,
joining.
Tina. Any final words, Derek?
Thank you, everyone who joined, and I wish you God's blessings as you go.
All right, my friend, I'm going to stop our recording. And